He stood trembling under the stage lights, a small, frail 91-year-old Filipino grandfather with silver hair, sun-worn skin, and eyes that carried decades of love and loss. The judges weren't prepared, the audience wasn't prepared, no one knew that in just a few minutes the studio would fall into complete silence, that people around the world would be wiping their tears, and that this old man, battling terminal cancer, would use the last of his strength to sing a love letter to someone who no longer walked this earth, his late wife. And as his voice cracked on the very first line, something happened in the room that no one could describe. Even Simon Cowell leaned forward, stunned, unable to look away. Before we begin, if you love emotional real-life stories of courage, love, and the human spirit, make sure to subscribe and stay with us till the end because nothing in today's story will leave you the same. Let's begin. He arrived at the AGT auditions without a family member by his side. Instead, he carried two things, an old wooden cane and a small black and white photograph of a young woman with a soft smile. It was slipping out slightly from the pocket of his shirt, the edges worn as if it had been held 1,000 times. His name was Lolo Roberto, known simply as Lolo to his neighbors back home in the Philippines. To them he was a kind, quiet man who never raised his voice, who still woke up early every morning to water the plants even though the doctors had warned him that his body no longer had the strength to keep doing the things he used to do. He didn't come because he wanted fame. He didn't come because he dreamed of winning. He came because life had given him a final countdown, and he wanted to use whatever time he had left to honor the greatest love story he ever lived. Behind the curtains backstage, a production assistant gently placed a microphone on his shirt. She asked him softly, "Are you nervous, sir?" He smiled a tiny smile, the kind only grandfathers can give. "My dear, I am 91. I do not have time to be nervous." The assistant laughed, but when she turned around, her eyes were moist. Something about him felt heavy, like he was carrying a world of memories inside his fragile body. As Lolo waited for his turn, a young violinist practicing nearby asked him, "Lolo, who is that in your picture?" He looked down at the photo and touched it gently. "My wife, Maria. She passed 3 years ago. Today, I will sing for her." The violinist felt her throat tighten. She nodded slowly, unsure of what to say. Lolo continued staring at the photo until his name was called. When the stagehand signaled him, he stood up slowly, gripping his cane, each step measured and cautious. But despite his age, despite the pain he hid under his gentle expression, there was a quiet bravery in his movements. He walked onto the AGT stage, and instantly the audience noticed him. Some whispered, some smiled warmly, a few even gasped at how fragile he looked under the bright lights. "Hello, sir," Simon Cowell said. "What is your name?" He cleared his throat softly. "My name is Roberto, but everyone calls me Lolo." "And how old are you, Lolo?" Simon asked, adjusting his glasses as if he already suspected the answer. 91 and a half, he said proudly, and the audience burst into laughter and applause. Even Simon chuckled. 91 and a half. That's very important. "Indeed it is," Lolo replied. "Every day is important when you don't have many left." The judges grew silent. The mood shifted. There was something about the way he said it, not dramatic, not sad, just honest, that wrapped itself around everyone's hearts. He continued speaking, still steady, still polite. "I have terminal cancer. The doctors said I don't have much time. But my wife, my Maria, she always wanted me to sing on a big stage like this. So I am here for her." There were no dramatic gasps, no over-the-top reactions, only a quiet heaviness that settled over the room. Sofia Vergara's eyes softened. Heidi Klum pressed her hands together. Even Simon leaned back, stunned, as if trying to take in the weight of his words. "What will you be singing today?" Simon asked gently. "A song I used to sing to my wife. Our wedding song. I hope she hears me today." The crowd fell into complete silence. The stage lights dimmed. The sound technician gave the signal. The music began, a simple, soft instrumental. Nothing fancy, nothing loud. And then Lolo opened his mouth. His first note was shaky, not because he lacked skill, but because the moment carried too much emotion. His voice trembled like an old violin that had been tucked away for decades. But as he continued, something magical happened. His voice steadied. The words flowed like warm honey, thick with love, memory, and longing. The audience felt it instantly. This wasn't a performance. This wasn't a competition. This was a man calling out to his wife across the distance of time and death. This was a love that refused to fade. He sang about the day they met, how she dropped a basket of mangoes in the market and how he helped her pick them up. He sang about their wedding under a tiny bamboo pavilion, the rain falling on the roof like a blessing. He sang about their struggles, the poverty they endured, the nights they went to bed with nothing but hope. He sang about the children they lost and the children they raised. He sang about the day she left, holding his hand, whispering, "I'll wait for you." Every lyric, every line, every soft vibrato carried a lifetime. The audience felt their chests tighten. People in the front row dabbed their eyes. A man in the second row covered his mouth, trying not to sob. Backstage, the producers stood still, forgetting their work for a moment. Even the camera operators slowed their movements, realizing they were capturing something rare. Halfway through the song, Lolo reached into his pocket with trembling fingers and pulled out the photograph of his wife. The audience's hearts broke at once. He held it gently against his chest as he sang the most emotional part of the song, a part he wrote himself many years ago. "If love could hold time still, I would have stayed in that moment with you. If life could let me bargain, I would give all my years just for one more day with you. But heaven is selfish, and it took you too soon. So hear me, my love, I am singing my way back to you." Even Simon looked away for a moment, blinking rapidly. He pressed one hand against his lips, not to hide disappointment or judgment, but to hide the emotion he wasn't prepared to show on live television. When the final note came, Lolo held it longer than expected, not because he wanted applause, but because he didn't want the moment to end. When he finally finished, the entire room remained still for a second, as if no one dared to breathe. And then the applause erupted. It wasn't normal applause. It was thunderous, overwhelming, rising from the deepest place in everyone's chest. People stood up all at once. A standing ovation so loud and so long that even the judges looked around, amazed at the audience's reaction. Lolo lowered his head slightly, almost embarrassed, like he didn't think he deserved such a response. But he smiled, a small, tender smile that reached his tired eyes. Simon finally spoke, his voice slightly shaky. "Lolo, I don't think we've ever had anyone who sang with so much heart. It wasn't about technique or perfection. It was pure love, and you reminded all of us why music exists." Heidi added, "I felt like I was listening to a letter written with tears. You sang to all of us, but we knew every word was meant for her." Sophia leaned forward, tears openly running down her cheeks. "Lolo, your love for your wife is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen on this stage. I think she heard you. I think she's proud." Howie Mandel placed his hand on his chest. "You gave us a gift, a moment we will remember long after the season ends." Lolo nodded gently, wiping his own tears. "Thank you, she was my life. Today, I wanted to tell her that I'm almost home." When it was time for the judges to vote, Simon lifted his hand first. "My vote is a yes, with all my heart." Heidi, "A big, big yes." Sophia, "Absolutely yes." Howie, "A million yeses." The audience cheered so loudly it shook the room. Lolo's smile grew wider, the kind of smile that only happens when a dream, even a decades-delayed dream, finally comes true. After leaving the stage, he walked back through the hallway backstage. Crew members clapped for him. Some cried openly. One young sound technician whispered, "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." Lolo didn't speak, he simply nodded, clutching his wife's photograph to his chest. That night, while sitting in his hotel room, he looked out the window, watching the city lights flicker. He whispered to the empty air, "My love, I sang for you. Did you hear me?" And in his heart, fragile, tired, but still full, he felt her answer. Not in words, not in sound, but in warmth. A warmth he remembered from years ago when she used to rest her head on his shoulder. A warmth that told him he was not singing alone. The video of his audition went viral within hours. Millions of people around the world watched it, and millions cried with him. Messages poured in from strangers, nurses, soldiers, widows, young couples, old couples, musicians, children, all touched by his story, all reminding him that love never dies. People shared how the performance reminded them to call their parents, forgive someone, appreciate their partner, hug their children, or simply say "I love you" while there was still time. A week later, the producers invited Lolo back for the next round. But something unexpected happened. One morning, the staff knocked on his hotel room door and found that he was too weak to move. He was rushed to the hospital. The doctors explained that his condition had worsened faster than they predicted. When Simon heard the news, he personally called to check on him. The producers sent flowers. Fans online created a global message chain wishing him strength. But Lolo, still gentle, still smiling despite the tubes and the pain, told the nurse, "I already received my reward. I sang for Maria on the biggest stage in the world. That was all I wanted." A few days later, he passed away peacefully in his sleep. In his hand, they found the photograph of his wife. The news reached the AGT team, and during the next episode, Simon spoke softly before the show began. "Tonight, before we start, we want to honor someone who touched all of our hearts. His name was Lolo, and he reminded us that love is the strongest song of all." The studio dimmed. They showed his audition video, and the entire room fell silent again, just like it did when he first sang on that stage. Fans around the world lit candles, shared tributes, wrote songs, and created artworks in his memory. But the most heart-touching tribute came from a simple message left by a viewer from the Philippines. "True love never dies, it just waits." And maybe that's what Lolo believed too. Because somewhere beyond this world, beyond sickness and pain, beyond the limits of time, an old Filipino grandfather with tired eyes and a gentle smile finally walked toward the woman he loved. And she waited for him, just like she promised, and together, hand in hand, they finally went home.